Hi, Marni.
Hi, Jamila.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. So let's jump in. So please tell me about your most memorable experience with a nonprofit burnout job.
Yeah, okay. I entered the nonprofit sphere directly out of college as a way of engaging in social justice issues and the issues I was most passionate about. But what I did not realize was that I'd be fighting for equity within my own organization. I started out as an unpaid intern and eventually became the director of communications, wearing multiple hats along the way. And during that time, I was paid $15 an hour with a stipend for healthcare, but that stipend did not cover all of my healthcare costs. I didn't have access to paid leave, overtime, or sick days, and so yeah, and while my job description stated that I'd be working, 35 hours a week, I actually was working closer to 50 to 60 hours a week. And I wasn't paid for the additional hours on top of my 35 hours a week. And so to make up for this, the organization came up with a kind of unofficial system of comp time, where you keep track of your hours, and you could essentially take time back at some point if you worked over 35 hours. You could take maybe an official day off or two. Um, but because of the culture of overwork and the morality driven nature of the work, we often didn't have the opportunity to take that time, or we were coerced or shamed in various ways, for taking time for ourselves. Because we're supposed to be totally dedicated to the mission of social justice and equity, and yeah, and these unofficial illegal policies on the outside, they were meant to help us and work with us, but in the end, it really just encouraged unhealthy practices, and it opened the door for a lot of different forms of manipulation and surveillance. And additionally, because I had a staggering amount of student debt, like I said, I had just gotten out of college. I had to take on two extra part time jobs on top of this job. So even though my superiors knew this, there was still so much guilt put on me to work more than I was getting paid. And honestly, it ran me into the ground. I became burnt out. I stopped taking care of myself, and my physical health, my mental health, it really, really suffered. And I also, on the interpersonal end of things, experienced manipulation on behalf of some board members, who had a lot of influence over our major donors. And they didn't want me to be challenging internal issues of equity. And they threatened to withhold donations, which would directly then threaten my position due to funding and my salary, and my wages. But there were a lot of race and class issues within the organization. On the most basic level, we were using the work of volunteers of color to gain respect within the community, but on the flip side, had an all white paid staff benefiting off of their labor. And so I really, really do that believe that if official funding streams that we had received for the organization through places like foundations emphasized well-being of workers through wages or healthcare or benefits or just general operating costs, that job would have been so much more sustainable and a career of mine. And yeah, so I just thanks so much for letting me share my story. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry that happened to you because it sounds like it could have been a great place, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
That's really unfortunate. Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for talking with me today.